they can often cause reduced airflow, which in turn can cause significant damage to your HVAC system and actually can choke out your HVAC system. So you're actually filtering less. OHLA does recommend changing HVAC system filters even if they do not appear dirty. Typically, we do it on a quarterly basis. During these times, we recommend you do it maybe once every other month. So, Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to touch on that. Really, there's 2 points, again, with system filters. As Austin commented, your equipment is designed for a specific filter. Yes, there's some latitude for up and down, and still probably operate your equipment well. The problem is that the CDC, the state of Ohio, and OHLA come out and said you need to move to a minimum of a MERV 13 or is better. The problem with that is most equipment's running on a MERV, 1, which is a fiberglass, up to a MERV 8, which is pretty much your standard in the industry. And moving to a MERV 13, it doesn't necessarily double your pressure drop, but it's probably 2/3 higher than what you're getting on a MERV 8. In that situation, you're going to slow down airflow far enough. You're going to have DX problems. You're going to have problems with your heating, and you're not going to deliver the amount of air you need to the space. And then the religious issue is the whole reason for suggesting these filters is that is for COVID. The problem is the filters, even if you're at an extremely high HEPA, still doesn't filter out the side of the COVID-19 virus, which is significantly smaller. So although it's a good idea to have filters, it protects your equipment, going too far is actually detrimental to your equipment, the operation of your facility, and you're wasting money on something that really has a placebo effect.
And that's where we, as Air Force One stands, kind of differs to a lot of the competition, because a lot of people are making money selling filters. In turn, we want to sell you the right filters, but you don't want to overdo it. So with that in mind, we've hit 2 slides. Does any questions come in?
Nope, we are good here.
All right, perfect. Moving along. So routine systems cleanings. Routine system cleanings increase equipment efficiency and aid in reducing failure of equipment. A couple things that we recommend is cleaning air ducts and coils to minimize dust and allergens, which will reduce the spread of viruses and bacteria. There's some additional recommended cleanings that we've included in this slide. But really, the main benefit or the secondary benefit is routine cleanings of ducts, coils, and fans maintain equipment efficiency, which extends the operating life of your equipment and reduces the likelihood of a catastrophic failure.
Yeah, Austin, a proper preventative maintenance program where you're cleaning, you're going to get the proper efficiencies that your equipment was designed for, which means it's a money save. It's going to extend the life. So instead of a 15 or 20-year run, maybe you're pushing it out to 5 years on packaged equipment. And at the end of the day, having clean equipment means you're providing clean air to your space.
Correct. So now we're getting kind of the meat of the presentation and the topic that's on everybody's mind, and that's improving indoor air quality. Obviously, improving indoor air quality will improve the health, productivity, and well-being of occupants. There are many air purification products on the market that reduce pollutant levels. Adding PHI is the only way to properly disinfect air streams. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about what PHI is during this presentation. Indoor air quality plays a significant role in reducing the effects of harmful pathogens. Although there are various ways to improve IAQ, research suggests PHI will stop the spread of bacteria, germs, fungi, and viruses such as COVID-19. Another benefit to this PHI technology is it's considered a green technology. And it's green because it can reduce your total and heating cooling spend by up to 40%. This is due to a lot of that spend comes from the cold air or the hot air coming in through your HVAC system, and it needs to be conditioned. And that's really where the utility consumption comes into play. Air purification also reduces exposure to harmful VOCs and bad odors. And lastly on this topic, economizers proportion relief return of outdoor air to allow sufficient air and oxygen into the building. This kind of goes into part with what we know. We know the outside air is good. Typically, there's less restrictions outdoor, and we'll kind of go into more detail later on in the presentation, but this is a very important part of improving indoor air quality. And Brian, I know you have some thoughts on this subject, so have at it.
Yeah, specifically with the PHI and the green technology, there's been a lot of talk. We talked earlier that some of the recommendations are increasing outdoor air as high as you can go, within reason of your equipment being able to reheat or cool that air. That's specifically to get all the positives from outdoors inside. And when you add PHI, and we'll get to the details here in a slide or two, you can actually reduce that outdoor air down to the absolute minimum needed for positive pressure in your building and or to handle your exhaust requirements, and nothing more. So, typically in a building, you're looking at 15 to 30% open to maintain your positive air, to get your air change, and to get your typical building, also cover your building pressurization. When you add PHI, you can reduce that down to as low as 5% or less, which means you're not reheating or cooling outdoor air prior to bringing it in to the conditioned space. It's a significant save in ROI when it comes to total cost of heating and ventilation costs. Sorry.
Thanks, Brian. And as a visual representation, we're looking at this graphic of a entrance of a hotel. And essentially what it's showing here is that the PHI is installed in the existing HVAC system. It recreates outdoor air indoors and eliminates 99% of airborne pathogens while disinfecting air streams and disinfecting hard surfaces. So most of the precautions that people are taking are surface disinfecting, social distancing, and the use of face masks. Now, those are all great, but we need a kind of a combined strategy. And what the one thing a lot of people are missing is the air, and that is typically how this virus is transmitted. Well, let me ask, has any questions come in?
You're good to keep going.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks, Michelle. So you're probably asking yourself, how does it work? And PHI stands for Photohydroionization, and it reduces viruses, bacteria, odors, air pollutants, and VOCs. So how does it work? It creates advanced oxidation processes in various chemical compounds. But at the end of the day, most of these are hydroperoxides or friendly oxidizers, meaning that once the oxidizer has interacted with a pollutant, it reverts to oxygen. Now, kind of expanding on previous technologies, germicidal UV lights have been used for decades in the medical industry to destroy germs, viruses, and bacteria. We know this. However, UV light is only affecting and reducing airborne microorganisms that pass through the light rays. So what we know with COVID-19 is that, this is typically transmitted, it's a respiratory disease, through coughing, sneezing, breathing, and there's kind of a finite distance that it will travel. That being said, if you install UV light in your HVAC system, the likelihood of it actually scrubbing and neutralizing all of the bacteria and viruses is extremely unlikely. So Air Force One's recommendation is photohydroionization or PHI systems, which can reduce microorganisms by 99.9% in the air and on all hard surfaces.
Yeah, and adding to that, we know that there's a lot of people pushing UV, and UV has a place in the HVAC world. Specifically on the equipment, UV is traditionally used as a point of use system on your chilled water coil because it's a wet coil. It has a tendency to grow bacteria and mold. And by placing UV and directing the light directly at the coil, it will sanitize the coil and then make sure that you're not pushing things that grow on the coil down into the space, which then grow into space and have problems with respiratory diseases and everything else. Where it falls short is, although it does help the unit itself, it doesn't do anything for the space. Other than the secondary of that, you're not going to push things down from the coil. Where PHI or photohydroionization, since it creates hydrogen peroxide is the main thing that it does. It does it at a rate that allows it to disinfect the airstream, disinfect the airspace, and any surfaces. And as Austin mentioned, it's really an oxidizer. It's been used in the medical industry for 100 years. It has benefits well beyond your typical brown bottle in your medicine cabinet that you might clean a cut or a scrape off with. But when it oxidizes, it actually reverts to oxygen. So it actually enriches the space. Now, is it enough oxygen that you would probably notice it? No, but it's enough oxygen that it makes it equal to outdoor air and air change rates in your space, which is one of the reasons why we talked about the green energy earlier. So it has some secondary benefits, not just sanitizing your space, but actually helping the space be a higher quality of indoor air quality.
Yeah, and we're kind of in this presentation, we've kind of addressed UV light and photohydroionization because we have done our due diligence and looked at the products that are available on the market. And that's the one that we find is the most effective and has the longest track record. But please, if you have been proposed something or have any questions, whether it's bipolar ionization or any other technology, feel free to ask in our questions through this presentation or contact us afterwards, and we can kind of give you the pros and cons of each of the air purification systems that are out there today.
Yeah, and I would add that PHI is actually equal or lower cost to standard UV light with a significantly lower energy spend because it doesn't use as much energy to operate.
Thanks, Brian. So, and this is kind of going back to our last point where we've kind of done our due diligence and researched the product, and there's tons of data that affirms the effectiveness of photohydroionization. In this particular third-party test, they were looking at the H1N1 swine flu. In a controlled environment, UVC PHI, or just PHI, I'm sorry, was installed and turned on. And within 6 hours, the inactivation rate went to 99%, meaning at that 6 hour point, the flu virus was completely neutralized. And shall the system continue to run, it will maintain that level. Brian, do you have anything to add?
No, and I guess the one explanation I'd like to talk about is we've got this question before in the past is, okay, so if I turn my equipment off at nighttime, do we have to go through that 6 hour cycle? The easy answer is absolutely not. Once your space is running and the PHI and the hydrogen peroxide is in the space and it's neutralized the space, turning the equipment off after people leave, people are really the thing that caused the major issue, right? If there's no people there, there's no viruses. That's a very simple process. And starting your equipment up in the morning, as people come in, there's no reactivation of virus, and it maintains that 99% effect inactivation rate. Sorry. One of the important things here that I also want to talk about is, people say, well, does it kill it? Does it? Viruses aren't really a living thing, if you will. But the way that they are stopped is inactivating them so they can't duplicate, and that's really what's going on.
Let me ask, has any questions come in?
Nope, not yet.
All right. Don't be shy, anybody, if you have questions. So in a similar third-party test, this was looking specifically at bacteria, mold, and yeast, and albeit it took a little bit longer, it has the same kind of response. Within a 48-hour period, the inactivation rate went to 97 plus. So this is added benefits to PHI systems, in addition to obviously the reduction or the mitigation of the spread of viruses. So I like this slide. A lot of people like this slide. This is kind of what we know. We know that typically, somebody sneezes or coughs and the particulates spread, and that's how the virus is transmitted. This particular test that was tested actually for the TSA looked at PHI and simulated the sneezing effect or the aerosol of somebody coughing or sneezing. So what they found is the oxidizers were already in the air ready to kill microbes at this source, and oxidizers immediately reduced the microbes by up to 99%, and that was within 3 feet of the sneeze itself.
Austin, we do have, before we go forward, we do have a question. If you could restate about how the reduction of viruses is achieved, if we could answer that.
Yeah, and I could address that, Austin. So, and of course, we're not medical doctors, so we would encourage you to do your own research. But specifically with hydrogen peroxide, because it's an oxidizer that really attacks protein-based substances, which is what a virus is, it breaks down the RNA and keeps the virus from being able to, and that's why they call it inactivation, from duplicating. In essence, it sterilizes them, they cannot duplicate, so they are activated and pose no risk to a human being. Hydrogen peroxide itself, when it reacts with a protein-based substance, it turns into oxygen. So it's really just an oxidation that happens that causes that's how it reduces the virus to other air pathogens. Is that clear, or am I, do I need to add a little bit more to that?
I mean, I would say simply put, I mean, it sterilizes much like, rubbing alcohol or, any type of bleach. It just basically neutralizes it in its path. I think the simplest way to kind of explain it. And this slide actually kind of speaks to that a little bit. Hydrogen peroxide or hydroperoxides are in the outside air. There's a reason why when you go outside, it just feels fresh, and a reason why the virus isn't typically transmitted outdoors. The sun is a large UV light source, and it naturally reacts with metals in our atmosphere to create these hydroperoxides. What we know is indoor air has no hydrogen peroxides or hydroperoxides present, and pollutants build up. And that's why we want to get that fresh air indoors. And that's why they're recommending to increase, air turnover rates or outside air. Another way we can accomplish this is through PHI. Brian, do you have anything to add to this slide?
Yeah, specifically, adding a lot of outdoor air definitely will help your space. The major problem with that, and I think anybody in business understands, is if I'm going to take my outside air from 30 to say 60 or 80%, I'm going to be running my equipment at a 100% duty cycle and using sometimes 100% more energy to cool or heat or remove the latent heat, which is moisture from the air, so you have a comfortable space. So yes, is it a short-term fix? Absolutely. Does it help? Absolutely. But the cost and the degradation of your equipment by running it that hard is pretty significant over even a 1-year period. So going to something that actually gives you that benefit plus and pays back on an ROI allows you to not bring in the outdoor air, have the same environment inside, and provide a very, very comfortable indoor air quality.
Thanks, Brian. So I'll leave this slide up here briefly. These are customers that currently have PHI installed. As you can see, this is not a placebo or a new technology. There's some pretty heavy hitters that currently have PHI installed in some form in their facilities. Well, I have this. Go ahead.
I also think it's important to recognize that it is approved by the FDA. Mm-hmm. So you can speak on that, Austin.
Yeah, so this technology has been certified by the FDA as well as a lot of organizations. Specifically, this technology is used in the meat packing or food packaging industry and has been for quite some time. Actually, when there was a shortage of PPE due to supply chain issues, they actually repurposed some of these meat packing sterilization belts and ran PPE through them. So we definitely know, we have the data to know that this technology certainly works. Now, was there any additional questions that we had?
No additional questions.
Okay, so we're kind of getting towards the end. I like to keep the presentation about a half hour, but I did want to bring this up, and it's kind of Air Force One's recommendation to the association, and that's just to not spend more, but spend differently, and kind of make you think about what your current plan is. And I think that Shelley will speak briefly on that subject. So
I think the goal here is just to, and we put up some of the questions that we collaborate and will collaborate with you on. As you look at your previous plan, your current plan, your go forward plan, and you're evaluating its effectiveness, some questions that you can ask yourself and that we can help work through with you are, is it helping you? Is it mitigating your challenges? Does your plan actually help you achieve your operational goals and objectives? Is your plan, can you track it and measure the results? Is it proactive and scalable? Is it something that is customized for your facilities and your mechanical systems? Does it support your sales and revenue targets? Can it? Does it differentiate your brand or something that you're promoting? And does it positively impact your short and long-term capital budgeting and planning capabilities? So, again, we're very collaborative. Our goal is to just be a resource and a strategic partner. And those are some of the things that we can kind of work through operationally to help you and make sure you're never spending more than you have to. And the goal is to help you reduce operational costs and gain more comfort and control while you're addressing these issues as well.
Thank you, Shelley. And with that, that's everything for the presentation. Go ahead.
Real quick, we have a question about, do we have any hotels in Southwest Ohio that are using this technology, and would they give a reference? And I think we talked about that one before. We do have somebody in Columbus, correct?
Yeah, there's a handful of event centers that have this. here in Columbus that would be happy to be a reference?
We can also give references for the Ohio Department of Transportation is using this in their headquarters and rolling it out to all of their district offices. The CDC is using this in their data center, specifically where the computers are, but where the actual people set, and their main offices in Atlanta. We're doing the data center work. So we do have some fairly high-end references that we could provide. I think that the hotel and event centers are just now starting to look at this, and I'm not sure that there's going to be a massive Ohio install, but that doesn't mean there isn't. So let us dig in a little bit about that and talk to RTF. They may actually have some references that we can provide you. Actually, COSI also purchased this equipment.
Yeah. And White Castle's corporate headquarters. So there's definitely some big players. So with that, that's the main meat and potatoes of the presentation. I'll allow for a minute or two if somebody wants to ask any questions. If they don't feel comfortable asking it through this format, feel free to reach out to us directly. Our contact information can be found here. So we'll give it a minute. Let me know, guys, if any questions come in. Nothing? So with that,
There is one here, Austin, just a sec.
great.
One of them is there a maximum airflow rate that a system like this can handle? And if so, what airflow rate optimized the performance of this equipment?
And I'll answer that one. The equipment's size based off of your so when we're looking at a site that we're going to be putting PHI equipment in, we look at the air handlers and the amount of air that they move, and then the equipment is sized appropriately. So it's not a one size fits all. It's a they have multiple sizes rather than doubling things up and kind of doing a hybrid. They go all the way up to I think 200 tons, equivalent to 200 tons of cooling, or 100 CFM roughly, which is pretty big. I would assume it would cover anything that anybody on this call would have. So it's very tailored to your equipment. So you're getting the right amount of hydrogen peroxide in space to A, actually be effective, and B, not to overdo it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, there's systems that are small as a ductless split or a PTAC unit, all the way up to 100,000 CFM air handler that they use in Value City Arena, where Ohio State basketball plays. So there's an application for every type of HVAC system.
There's
Any
actually another one here. Do you anticipate any sort of tax credits or rebates from the power companies for this, like they do for LEDs?
The short answer is right now a lot of the rebates, even for LEDs, are kind of going away. Those things that the federal government's pulled back on. I do know that in a situation where you're doing capital investments and you're going with like PACE financing or EME financing from Constellation, or maybe one of the items from Engie, it does qualify as an item that you can win, and they will fund. But for tax credits, I think even though this technology has been around for about 20 years and it's been used heavily in of course, the hospital or the healthcare and the foods packaging market, it's just now really became mainstream because COVID and people are thinking about this, and so maybe there's a possibility that there could be some incentives that way in the future, but right now I'm going to say no.
But I would also like to pose to Joe and the OHLA that maybe this is a conversation that we can have in terms of highlighting that across the state to see what conversations we can have on the legislation kind of level.
That's definitely something that we are engaged in. Unfortunately, the policymakers in Ohio have been focused on the aspects of controlling the pandemic rather than business. We think that they'll get to that. The legislature has been on a too long break for the summer and has been forced to deal with scandal and leadership changes, but we hope now that they are back in session, we're going to have more opportunities for these types of suggestions and discussions to hopefully get somewhere. So not a lot of ability to do that earlier in the pandemic, but we've been sharing the message that now that we see this as a long duration event and the economic impacts are not going to magically go away just because it's the fall or January 1st, 2021, that they need to take some steps. So absolutely is part of our daily policy.
Other than that, I believe we wrapped up on questions in the chat from our end.
Perfect. Well, 40 minutes, right on track. I'd like to personally thank that everybody that's attended. I'd like to thank OHLA for hosting and bringing us on as a partner. And thank everybody for your time. And please know that we're here as a partner, a strategic partner. So should you have any questions or like to have any further discussions, do not hesitate to reach out to us. Does anybody else got anything?
Well, we thank you as well. We do think that there is going to be great value because this is just going to be so much more important week by week as we go forward. I think we're off to a great start. We're going to continue to build those connections and share information. For our members and partners on the call, we urge you to watch for more information about Air Force One, about ventilation systems, requirements in general, as we see some of those start to come online, and the options that will be available for you. We'll have more information, commentary, articles from Air Force One as we go along, and you can see the contact information on the screen, so you can always get a hold of our partners directly, and they are in the online partner directory and will be in the printed partner directory that we distribute as we get into conference season. So thanks again to everybody, all of our partners at Air Force One, Brian, Austin, Shelley, everybody else on your teams. We're really looking forward to doing much more with you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everybody for attending. Have a good rest of this shorter holiday week, and let's look forward to the annual conference where we'll have more opportunity to discuss issues like this on November 23rd and 24th at the Hilton Columbus at Easton. And make sure you check your inbox today for the September OHLA e-newsletter, which has some information about the recent awards events and other activities. So thanks very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, Joe.